In the jungles of the East River, casualties pile up in a clash between
penguins? After being clipped by enemy fire, Mike Davis is sent home to recover. But unable to readjust to civilian life, he finds himself drifting until he stumbles upon Lake City. There he meets Jill, an aspiring songbird, and lands himself a new job as the local librarian. But has Mike finally found his nesting place? Or has he simply just come home to roost? March on down and wet your beak with A Penguin's Memories. This is one birdwatch you won't want to miss.
You know, just because the movie we're talking about was sponsored by a beer company, doesn't mean this review is. Although it'd be cool if it was.
So, Sai, setting that aside, what did you think about A Penguin's Memories?
I want to say it's weird, but what's weird about it is how normal it is.
Yeah, it's been a while since we first watched this, and I remember when we first watched it, the whole time we were just confused.
We kept asking ourselves, why are they penguins?
What commentary are they trying to make, making them penguins? Why wouldn't they make him a bird of prey? Because, like, you know, Mike kind of comes from the war, and they're all like, oh, attaboy, son, did you kill them all? How many people did you murder? And all this shit. And so you're just kind of like, okay, well, you know, this kind of, you know, behavior would make sense for, like, a predatory bird or something, like an eagle or a vulture or a turkey, you know, something.
Which I guess penguins technically eat fish, but
yeah,
they're not the animal you associate with war.
No. So, like, we're sitting there like, well, maybe it's because, like, they're marching to war and penguins have, like, a march. Like,
No, none of this. It doesn't matter.
No.
Because for anyone who hasn't seen this movie before, you probably just know it as that weird club penguin in the Vietnam War anime.
Yeah.
But really, that's only like the first 10 minutes of the movie. And nothing about this movie has to do with the fact that they are penguins. It's not even like they like address it in any capacity.
Like, not even the dialogue even, like, makes reference to the fact that they're penguins.
No, if anything, they talk about each other as if they were people.
Like, they're talking about, like, their breast size and all this shit.
What are you talking about? Penguin breasts. Penguins don't lactate.
I guess they technically have breasts. No, the reason why they're penguins is simply because of a beer company.
I guess we should just, like, address this up front before we get into, like, our thoughts on the actual plot of the movie. In the early 1980s, Suntory Beer had penguins for mascots. Mm-hmm. And there were these series of commercials involving two penguins named Mike and Jill.
Yeah.
And I guess that they were successful enough that somehow they took these characters and, like, a few, like, recognizable images and transformed them into this coming home from war character drama that has nothing to do with selling beer.
It's basically just like, they're like, hey, let's take those Budweiser frogs and make Jacob's Ladder using...
Exactly. Yeah. It's not even, like, trying to sell you beer. It's just...
No, I don't think they even, like, reference beer. Like,
No.
They go to the bar and they drink alcohol, like wine.
But who would want to drink a beer after this?
I mean, no, okay, maybe they were trying to make their audience so depressed that they would needed a beer after they left the theater.
Yeah. If you only know this movie for the first 10 minutes, the Vietnam War section, where, you know, you put, like, Fortunate Son over it, they're penguins, instant comedic value. The rest of this hour and 40-minute long movie is just somber and meditative and just kind of a downer in a lot of ways.
Like, the conflict is very adult.
Very grounded, and because, you know, when you watch it, you might think, like, you know, oh, this is kind of like a cliche or whatever. They're dealing with all this stuff, but these are real things, you know.
It uses a lot of, like, the cliches. You know, at the beginning, you got the guy is like, I got a girl back home.
Yeah.
And you're like, yep, he's dead.
He's dead. We don't even know who he is. We just know he's going to die.
After that, it's just about him readjusting to life, you know, as a civilian. He comes home and he's, like, kind of a vagabond. He's kind of drifting, and then it just goes into this weird musical sequence. Like,
oh, yeah, a random insert song, which it's Mike wandering around the countryside. It's very, you know, reserved and just kind of, you know, calm. And then you just get this very cheery and upbeat insert song musical number.
It's a jarring experience as like the viewer, but I guess it's supposed to kind of like illustrate the juxtaposition of like Jill and Mike.
Yeah.
And just how uplifting Jill is supposed to be to Mike at this point in his life.
Yeah, because that's when Mike first sees Jill, right? He just sees her at the park singing.
Yeah, that's literally the first time he's laid eyes on Jill.
Yeah.
And you kind of get this interesting, like, it's kind of a subtle, like, little thread, but when Mike kind of comes home, he's kind of thinking about, his mom's cooking and all that, and he's kind of thinking about how his sister would play the piano and sing while he was at home, but it doesn't feel like a home anymore, and that's why he leaves. But then he comes across Jill, who's really into singing, and I think there's kind of like this little subtle connection of like he's kind of drawn to that because it kind of reminds him of being at home listening to his sister.
But what it does is it sets up Jill as like this sort of character that will be able to rehabilitate Mike from his the psychological shit he got from serving in not the Vietnam War, by the way.
No,
it's not the Vietnam War. This is not the real world technically. It's the Delta War in the movie. Because they also talk about like where were you stationed and stuff like that, and it was like I was on the East River or whatever, which makes me think that it was a war being fought on a like literal river delta.
Yeah,
which would also explain why the setting is like this like a humid jungle Vietnam looking environment.
Doesn't explain why penguins are there though.
No, it doesn't. That's not a climate penguins should be in. It's entirely unhealthy for them.
Man, climate change really hit hard.
That's why they're fighting.
Oh, shit. There you go.
There's our theory. There's our game theory video for this movie. On top of this, you also have a few B plots because, you have Mike. He's taking up this job as a librarian. And he's just kind of like living like a very slow, normal life, just readjusting back into society.
Yeah.
But on top of that, you also have Jill, who wants to be a singer, is trying to make it in the industry. And all this stuff with her, trying to get signed to some sort of record label in the city.
Yeah.
And move to the city and, become a professional singer. But there are problems with that because you also have this doctor character, Jack, who Jill's father wants Jill to marry because,
Jack and Jill.
Jack and Jill, of course. That's definitely, he's also a doctor.
But he's like wanting to date, one of his nurses that he kind of confides in.
Yeah, he has like this whole side thing going on as well with this nurse. Almost like a soap opera sort of setup where like, oh, these two are supposed to be together, but they both want to be with like different people.
Yeah. But then they kind of flesh Jack out.
Yeah.
Where then it's kind of revealed that, he was also in the war. Mike kind of is able to identify with him on that level.
Yeah.
Where he's like realizing, oh, he probably also feels displaced. And he's also kind of registering that in his own way.
Yeah.
They're at least able to like connect with each other on some level.
That's probably the best scene in the movie.
Yeah.
I'd say.
Definitely. But then you also have like the lady that Jill has been working for this whole time is revealed to be her mom. And it's kind of revealed that she too kind of went off on the path that Jill's kind of going toward.
Yeah, yeah.
And in doing so, she was able to pursue her dream and have that freedom. But what ended up not panning out, she was left with nothing, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like she didn't have her career that she, went and pursued. And then she had left her family back home. And so she kind of just was left with nothing. They're kind of almost like the older versions of them. And just so you're able to see like this alternate future that they could potentially have if they kind of make a different choice. But it does some interesting stuff with its story.
Yeah.
Like you get some nice like interpersonal conflict and internal conflict. Because obviously, the story is about Mike just trying to readjust into civilian life.
Yeah.
Then he kind of has this budding relationship with Jill. And he's trying to like reconcile the fact that he feels like he's not really worthy. It has like this survivor's guilt because he left people back in Vietnam. No, that's wrong. Who died for him to survive.
Yeah.
And he's kind of having to have this balancing act of like, this self-hatred.
Yeah, and Mike as a character is very reserved. And these are penguins. They're not particularly emotive in general. But Mike still is a very, I would say, like, relatable and just, like, empathetic character.
You reminded me, I remember that was one of our complaints about the movie as we were watching it. Their character designs don't really allow for there to be much emotion.
No.
Which, in some way, I guess you could say is good, but it's really weird and, like, uncanny when you're watching it and they just have the same facial expression for, like, a huge range of emotions.
Yeah.
He just looks like a goofy, neutral-looking penguin.
But at the same time, You know, he has these like dark, sort of like beady dot eyes, and those just kind of give him like 1,000-yard stare constantly.
Kind of just like he's staring into your soul. Touching on the staff, it's kind of interesting because the studio hasn't really done much, at least in the way of like anime.
No, you look at their like My Anime List or AniList, and it's very sparse what they've produced.
Yeah, it's mainly made up of people who are like ex-Mushi Productions employees.
Yeah.
And it looks like they kind of started with was it a Tezuka adaptation?
Yeah, famously Triton of the Sea.
Yeah.
Was that Tomino's? I want to say that was Tomino's like first like directorial work, and where he famously was like, Tezuka's manga is really boring, so I'm changing things. So even back then, Tomino was a massive arrogant prick.
No, okay, so his first directorial work was Kaite Shonen Marine.
It's good you corrected me on that before, there were 1,000 comments giving the video engagement saying that I'm wrong.
But interestingly, that studio also did this little unknown movie called The Sensualist.
The Sensualist, which the screenplay was written by Eiichi Yamamoto, who famously directed Belladonna of Sadness, and it's very similar in a lot of ways to that.
Well, it is like a novel adaptation that's based on the novel The Life of Amorous Man.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 17th century Japanese novel. I see that, yeah.
It's funny because they did this movie, which stemmed from a commercial, and the studio ended up kind of transitioning from doing this kind of stuff to doing commercials and like CGI cutscenes for video games.
Okay.
Finding information about this studio is kind of difficult.
Yeah.
I was able to find on the Wayback Machine their old website, which gives you some interesting fog effects and cloud effects that they created. Other than that, there's not really like a great way to kind of look at stuff that they've done, like as far as like a catalog or anything like that. But yeah, it just creates this weird little trinket of anime.
Yeah, and it's not like, it's uncommon for anime characters to also, be selling products. It's not even uncommon for, I guess, mascots to be, have like their own spin-off animated works. But not like this.
No.
Not something that feels almost just like inappropriate to have this kind of story with this kind of context. You could just easily make these characters people and nothing would change really.
No. In fact, it would actually probably just make more sense.
Yeah, it'd make more sense, but also we probably wouldn't be talking about it because that's kind of the selling point of the movie as well.
Yeah.
Is it's, penguins in Vietnam. Instant clickbait value.
Instant views. With all that in mind, Sai, would you recommend the audience here to watch Penguin's Memories?
I would say watch it.
Yeah, check it out. It's not highly recommended, but you got an afternoon to kill. It's on YouTube.
Yeah, it is all on YouTube. Yeah, but go in knowing that what you've seen of the movie on YouTube and in like meme videos is the first 10 minutes, and then the rest of the movie, which is like 90 minutes, is just going to be very slow with a lot of drama. And that's it. If that's not your cup of tea, if that doesn't sound like something you want to watch, don't. But if it is, yeah, check it out.
Yeah, you might want to check out, PTSD penguins. It's fine.
That's what the P in PTSD stands for. Penguin Traumatic Stress Disorder.
I'm trying to come up with jokes for like the last 5 minutes thinking how to end this.
What a lame joke.